All right, welcome to the FitBucks podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome there as well. We got a special one today. As you guys know, I love interviewing individuals, especially in the healthcare world, that have gone out, created their own businesses, become entrepreneurs. And we have a special guest today, Miss Ebony Tillery. She is a board certified family nurse practitioner. She has over 18 years of experience, having grown up all the way from Brooklyn, New York, to making seven figures as a nurse entrepreneur. I always get that word wrong. I see the word nursepreneur, and I don't know why I have a hard time saying it. But today she owns a thriving weight loss clinic, a virtual weight loss clinic. She works with telehealth companies with national contracts. Most importantly, she mentors hundreds of other nurse practitioners through her program, Nursepreneur Academy. And not only that, but now you've gone into investments, and we'll touch on all that. But before we do that, I want to welcome you to the show, Ebony. Welcome, and great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start off with your background because I want people to understand, they always ask me, being an entrepreneur myself, like they see the glitz and the glam, right? Like, especially with social media nowadays, all these people putting up stuff all over the internet, like, look at me, look at me. They don't understand what drives you to that point and all the hard work that goes into it. But let's start back. I touched on that you grew up in Brooklyn, you know, uh, basically a place, like you say all the time, a place that people don't really ever leave. What was the mindset or experience that pushed you to basically say, I want to do more? Because obviously that's why you became a nurse practitioner too, because being an NP is not an easy thing to do, let alone being an entrepreneur. So, talk about your upbringing in Brooklyn and kind of those experiences and how they help shape you today.
Mhm. Yes, yes, yes. So I grew up in Brooklyn, in Brownsville, which was one of the toughest areas. I did grow up in a two-parent home. My dad was an engineer, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I did very well throughout school. And I really when I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. So like this pivot of, I'm a nurse entrepreneur, a nurse practitioner, and now I'm teaching other nurse practitioners. This is like my purpose, I feel like.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm still able to, help and heal people and teach as well. But just growing up, my drive was like I seen people in the neighborhood, they just didn't have the drive. They were content and comfortable with staying there, and that just wasn't me. I wanted more. So once I graduated from high school, and when I graduated from high school, they had a program where once you graduate, you'll get your CNA license. So I started as a certified nursing assistant, worked hard in the program, graduated, took the tests, took the boards, passed, and then I moved to Florida. And then once I moved to Florida, I kind of just started my nursing career from
Yeah,
then.
yeah. And it's crazy because you touched on something about, people being content and staying there. I even see it, like, even when people are not content, it's like they stay there. Um, and it's an amazing thing. Those of you that have listened to the podcast for a while, you know that I talk about behavioral finance a lot and learned behaviors a lot and trying to break those learned behaviors. Because I see it all the way from poor neighborhoods, the middle class neighborhoods, the upper class, like
Mhm.
the children of the children. It's like a learned behavior, and even not financially. Even I see it even with like alcoholics, for example. There's a lot of times where, like, if the parent's an alcoholic, the child is an alcoholic. It's like a learn. It's almost like they can't escape it. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean by like looking around your neighborhood and nobody's like changing, nobody's trying to move up. So and sometimes we have to go through, a really bad experience. And some of us say we just keep spiraling downwards. Some of us say, no, I want to break this, and you spiral upwards. And that's, kind of about your journey. And I won't share too much. I'll let you dive into what you want to, but before, going into like the entrepreneurship part and all that stuff, you had been through abusive relationships, miscarriages, divorces, that type of stuff. Like these moments, like that helped build you. Touch on that a little bit because sometimes, like I said, you have to hit that that bottom point and those hardships before, and it does build that character. So talk a little bit about that.
So just throughout the past 19 years, it's been pretty tough. And like you said, people see the glamour, but they don't see the hard work behind it. When I decided to move from Brooklyn to Florida, my parents weren't, they weren't happy about it. So you want to say I sort of kind of got cut off. So I had to like figure it out on my own with school, financial aid, getting funded and all that good stuff. Um, so figured out on my own. I did move down to Florida with my high school sweetheart at the time, and just being away from family, I think he took advantage of that piece because I didn't have the family support. I only had him. So he took advantage of that, and the relationship initially did not, it wasn't abusive, but once we moved to Florida, it became abusive. To the fact where, it really disrupted a few semesters while I was in school. And then I felt like, oh my God, I'm always getting A's and B's this semester. I just really, I wasn't mentally there to focus. But I got over that hurdle, got accepted to nursing school, got out of that relationship, and then just focus on school. And of course, in between nursing school and grad school, I just kept getting in those type of relationships. And it's partly just my decisions that I made throughout life. And it felt bad in the moment, but it definitely shaped me to who I am today and what I'm not going to tolerate, what I am going to tolerate. And it really did drive me to be my best to where I am now. And then I did get married. That didn't work out. COVID hit. And in the midst of COVID hitting, I was in the process of getting my first home, in the process of going through a divorce, and traveling as well as a nurse. Because during that point, I had to travel in order to get into my home. And then I did have a son. He was 2 years old at the time, so I had to leave him with my mom. So that was tough on me, but I had to do what I had to do. I had to figure it out. So it was a lot going on during that time. After COVID, I'm kind of like, I can't do it. I'm burnt out. This is a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I try to because we all have really bad things happen in our lives in one fashion or another. And I've seen it with some family members where like they don't ever they just constantly look at it like this happened to me, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, and they never get out of it. And it's the mindset that I try to instill with everybody, including from my 8-year old daughter all the way up through people that we work with at Fitbox. It's like these events they happen in your life. They could be bad, but you need to try to turn them into good. Like, what can you learn from them? How do they make you more resilient? What can you use from that? And although the experiences are horrible, um, it's bad. And I mean, like I had one about a year and a half ago. I still can't even share it online because it's actually a legal case going through right now. But it's like it's the same thing. It's like this is an absolute horrible thing. And you look at it, and you're like, how can any good come of this? But it's like, look, if you make it through this, like
Make it through
you're
with
gonna be good. Like, like so yeah, it's trying to that mindset of taking it from hey, this happened,
me.
I'm gonna make this a good thing no matter even though it was bad. Um, so you talked about like the burnout, you know, what what was that breaking point? Because going into entrepreneurship, I mean, it's not easy. And so when you're already burnt out and you're like, look, I'm gonna go into entrepreneurship, it's like, oh crap. Like, so what was that was that breaking point that was like, man, I gotta do something different.
So the breaking point was COVID. So during COVID, I had to travel. And then when I traveled, the particular contract that I had, we had to work 6 days straight, 1 day off.
You
So I did that consistently for 3 months. I don't know how I did it. It was the strength of the Lord.
know?
Because at home, when I'm working like locally, I can barely do 3 shifts, 3 12s. So to just have that energy, that power, and that strength to do 6 shifts straight, 12 plus hours, because it was never just 12 hours just come and go. It was in the middle of COVID. Like it was never just easy, and it was really stressful. So from doing that for 3 months, I came home and I'm like, I have to do something different. I can't. I'm burnt out. I don't want to see a hospital. I don't want to see 12-hour shifts. I don't even want to see a pair of scrubs right now. Like I'm burnt out. And just jumping into entrepreneurship, it's scary because as nurses, we know when our next paycheck is going to come. Like we know, okay, if we want to take a trip or our, kid need this for softball or soccer, like we'll pick up an extra shift in order to afford whatever item. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have to pick up another shift because that's just adding to the burnout. You're already burnt out working now. You're like, oh, I'm gonna pick up a shift to get this XYZ. Um, so at that point, I'm just like, I can't do it. I have to figure it out. And I then invested into a mentor that was in the area that I wanted. And, she inspired me and like our goals aligned. And I wanted to be where she was at. So,
Yep. Yeah, and yeah, because we had the Facebook group with NPs. I think something that's like almost 40,000 NPs now. So burnout's something I see all the time and talked about all the time. And that's why I was so excited to have you because I see all the time individuals asking about like what else can we do. But
mhm,
the question I get a lot of times is what's the biggest hurdle of getting started? And the number one thing that I see is people are just afraid, the fear,
mhm.
right? So what were your biggest fears? How did you overcome it? I know you touched on the mentor, and that's also a big help. But what was that big fear, and what did you have to do individually to get over it?
The big fear was just knowing when to start because you know you want this, you see this, but you don't know how. You know the what, but you don't know the how. So just starting and not overthinking, just do it. I got to the point where I was just doing it. I didn't think because when you think on it, you start doubting, well, maybe this, maybe that. Don't think, don't overthink it. Just do it. Just start. And if it doesn't work, it is okay. Not everything's gonna work. You're gonna fail, you're gonna get back up, or you're gonna, have a different business venture. It's okay. It's okay to fail.
Yeah, like what's funny is two aspects because like my friends, my family, and even business associates, like they know that I keep like a notebook. It's about this thick, about an inch to 2 inches thick, with me almost everywhere I go. And in that book is just business idea after business idea after business idea. And they're just like, how do you come up with these business ideas? And it's like, you have to get away from fear. Like if I think this is a good one, and part of fear is overthinking. And I
Yes.
can't tell you how many times, because I also come from a very, religious family. So how many times where it's just like, if I sit here in my office trying to think of something, either I can't think of it or I come up with the dumbest ideas you'll ever hear of in your life, right? Like I'm like, I look back at some of them, I'm like, why would I ever do that? But it's times where it's just like, I just go sit outside and not think about anything. You let your mind go, and all of a sudden it's just like, here's your answer, and you're like, man, that's a really good idea. Like I wasn't even trying to think about this. Like I just came up with one yesterday. Like we're starting to build out a lot of AI stuff for financial planning.
Mhm.
We're going and we're going and we're going. And on Sundays I don't do any work. And so like I would just sit there and I'm like, wait, we could put this here and we can roll this out in like 3 weeks. Like, why didn't
Right.
I think about that before? Like,
Right.
holy cow. But last week I was working like 18 hours a day, and yesterday was the first time I was just like, I ain't doing shit. Like, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden, boom, the idea came, right? So that's how it works. But now, I mean, that's led for you, like I said, you gotten, 6 and 7 figures as an entrepreneur now. You had the virtual weight loss clinic, you contract with companies from home. Explain to the viewers, what does that typical day kind of look like for you? Um, what does that just and what does it look like? How does it compare to like working bedside? What does that look like?
So definitely the soft life, working from home. I'm completely remote. So in working in a hospital or a clinic, I had to, get up, commute to work. If you have kids, drop the kids off. And now I drop my son off. I barely leave the house. I'll drop him off to school, then I'm back home. I'm able to stop for coffee before starting my day. My days usually start at 10 or 11, and depending on the day I either will be seeing patients through the contracts that I have or my virtual practice. So I'm contracted with five big telemedicine companies right now, and then I have my virtual practice. So the way I kind of do my week in my practice, I may work 2 days a week, and then with the contracts, I kind of like pick and choose. Well, okay, I'll do 5 hours with this contract, and then most of the contracts are not like video. I have one that is video, which is called synchronous, and then the other ones are all async. So like email, chat based, you log in, you see your patients, they'll fill out like an intake form, and you provide care that way. So it's very like relaxing and less stress than the bedside for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the cool parts. Like my daughter's 8, and I mean I run, FitBUcks. We got a number of employees, and so it's like I got to be present at all times. Especially because we even have some employees overseas. So it's like, 2 in the morning, I got to be present. But the cool part is that I don't ever miss anything for my daughter. Like,
Mhm.
if I got to be somewhere at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with my daughter, I'm there. She's at Taekwondo, she's at ballet, whatever it is. It's like, yeah, like I'm going. Like,
Right.
whereas if I was, like yourself, like being a nurse, it's more stringent because you got to be in the hospital, right? And finance, it's like we're at a desk all day banging away on our keyboards, like with Excel and all that stuff. And I don't ever see myself going back to that. But
I don't see myself going back to bedside or even in the clinic. Like it's so much things you can do virtually. Like I tell my mentees, because they get scared. It's fear. Fear is gonna take over everything. But you have to understand, we went to school all these years. We have a degree and we have these skills. They cannot take that degree and they cannot take the skills. And the skills that we learned in school, as far as like patient assessment and seeing patients, we're able to use those same skills and tools virtually. Like, of course, there's some, things that you can't see the patient virtually for, and that's when you'll refer them to the ER. But other than that, you can see a patient virtually. So it's the same exact thing. Instead of the patient being physically in front of you, you're seeing them through your laptop or computer.
yep, exactly. And I mean, speaking of some of those, again, we touched on fear, but you created, Nursepreneur Academy, and it basically helps nurse practitioners do exactly, what you've done.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, Besides fear, like because I see this every day. Like I said, we have hundreds of thousands of outreach on social media, and people are like, I want more, and then they don't do it.
Mhm.
Right. So, in your opinion, what do you think, besides fear, keeps nurses stuck in that, quote unquote 9 to 5 bedside role, not doing more? What keeps them stuck there?
I would say they want more, but they're comfortable, and they are scared of the unknown, pretty much. And a lot of like mentees, when I have these one-on-one calls with them, is like, I know what I want. I know what I want to do. I just not sure if I know how to do it. And they basically like they need their hand held doing it, which is okay. It's okay. I'm all for investing in a mentor. I have a mentor. Like your mentor has a mentor, and I invest into a mentor because you can't figure everything out yourself. You can't. You can't Google everything. You can't YouTube everything. Can't TikTok everything. You need someone who's been through it so you don't make those mistakes. You just skip all of that.
Yeah, the mentorship side. I mean, everything from mentor to network. I mean, you can't build a business that is successful by yourself. I mean, you can't. Even nowadays with the rise of like AI stuff, like you can't, you still need a network. You still need to get audience. You still need to do a number of things that requires you to have that support behind you. And like you said, the mentorship is huge. But I want to touch on another keyword that you said, comfort. Okay. Especially because, we see that with higher income earning individuals that don't ever make change because they have comfort. And I mentioned earlier, I see it across the board with everything.
Mhm.
From extremely poor people, like you're like, well, they're poor, they can't be comfortable. And even if they're on food stamps, like you're getting food and you have shelter, you got that comfort level, right?
Mhm.
So you're not gonna people tend not to change that. If you're making 80 grand a year and you got a roof over your head and food, you're comfortable. You don't want to risk that change, right? And I see it even with people that make $3 million a year. All of a sudden they don't want to take risks. And it's like because they're comfortable. And it's like so that contentness, that comfort. Um, I always tell people that the best example I can give them, I think it's something like 68 or 70% of the S&P 500, which is the top 500 largest companies in the United States, were created during recessions. And the reasoning is because their founders lost their jobs and they had a problem. They no longer had comfort. They had to figure something out. And guess what? They started a business and boom, there it goes. Because they pulled that comfort. And that's something that I joke around with my wife all the time. Whenever I get in a rut, I'm like, babe, I'm gonna move out. She's like, what? I'm like, I'm gonna go get like an apartment. I'm gonna put a mattress on the ground. I'm gonna have a mini fridge instead of a refrigerator. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, I'm making a problem. And she was like, no, you're not. You got an 8-year-old. You're not doing that. But yeah, it's like I go out of my way to like make myself uncomfortable because it helps
Yes. I
motivate.
was about to say, my saying is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You
Mhm.
just have to.
Exactly.
Not, you're going to be content. Like with the nurse practitioners, we all make good money. Like, we make good money, but it's like you're making that good money and you're burnt out.
Yeah.
Like making good money, even if it's the same as, as if I was working in the clinic, I'm not burnt out making the same money. I'm just not.
Yeah. Now
And
on that tone, like if somebody's on the podcast right now, listening to this in their car, at the gym, maybe even on a shift, like if they're doing that and they're burnout, feeling hopeless, because I could tell you there are thousands of people that are going to be listening to this that are burnout. Um, if they want to do something different, what would be that first step that you recommend? Saying, "Hey, do this."
so that first step, if they're wanting to like transition into the virtual realm, the first step will be to what I recommend to start getting multiple licenses. So what I did before I started my practice, I had one contract, and that one contract paved the way for the rest. And then I started getting multiple licenses because with the remote positions, it's very competitive, and they look at those nurse practitioners that have the high states, the high demand states, and multiple state licenses. So that would be my point for them to just start getting licensed. Last summer, I went from 4 to 25 licenses.
Yeah.
Once I got to 25 licenses, whenever I applied to these contracts, I already knew I was going to get a call back because
Yep.
that's like like 25. Yeah. So,
Yeah, well, that's the cool part too, because I know we're talking about like nurse practitioners, but there's gonna be, for example, like PTs that will listen to this too. And I mean, even that industry is doing a lot with telehealth. And now you have the compact where you have a license in one state and you're actually automatically licensed in a number of states. So, I know that we're talking a lot about NPs today, but I mean, this applies to, other professions as well. So great advice there. Now the fun part, like you've gone through all that, right? You're getting money. Um, Now you got extra money and now you're doing investments, right? So, talk a little bit about what you've done from there in terms of, just investments and what you're looking at and getting into.
yeah. So I'm now making the money. I got the extra money, and I'm all for long-term investments because my grandparents, they are from a different country, Guyana in South America. When they came over here in the US, they bought a whole bunch of properties in New York City. So now you can imagine how much it's worth now. So that kind of like gave me the drive. And then my dad does the same thing too. He has acres land. So I started investing into real estate. So I'll get houses every 2 to 3 years. And then that investment, I either will have a long-term tenant or I do short-term rental, so Airbnb. So I'll do that. I invest in crypto. I also did Turo, which is a marketplace for cars, so you can put your vehicle or a fleet of cars on that marketplace, and you're your own independent like contractor with Turo, and you rent your cars out on there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny about real estate. I was just telling my wife, like, you should buy a house in Costa Rica. Like, I'll go live in it for like 3 months out of the year because like we live in Texas and I mean I grew up in California, so the summers out here are absolutely brutal. And I'm like, I'll just go live in Costa Rica, on the beach for 3 months because I can work from anywhere. And then we could just rent it for, short-term rentals. And she's
Hmm.
like, can we? I'm like, she's like, look into it. I'm like, man, I'm too busy to look into it.
And that's how it be. People just they want to do it, but they're busy. And I'm like, I did it all, Turo, Airbnb, and that's my thing with the real estate. I'm actually looking at getting one in Texas, one in Cabo, Mexico.
Mhm.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Invest, invest, invest.
Yeah. Yeah. Cabo right there in the Bay or Sea of Cortez. It's nice. My uncle had a house out there and it's a nice little area. So, uh, now one or two more things I wanted to touch on because this is the most important thing. I mean, the money part's great and everything. But to me, it's time. Like, having that freedom of time, how's that helped with like your family, building a legacy for your son, all that type of stuff, hit on that. Cause again, that to me, that's the most important part of all this. So just touch on that about how your life's changed from, like you said, 2020 burning out to now doing this.
Yes, it's definitely changed. So prior to my life now, we were working, 12 hours. If I had to call off, one, I will feel bad. Two, the charge nurse hiring director will make you feel bad. Well, can you work half a shift? And I'm like, no, I have to do XYZ or I have to take my son here. So it's like they guilt trip you and then you're feeling guilty. And I didn't like that. And then fast forward to now, I'm able to make my own schedule because I have my virtual practice. I'm available on these days. Your patients will book around your schedule. And then with the contracts, I'm all 1099, so independent contractor. So I tell them when I can work, when I'm available. And even if something happens on a day that I am seeing patients, is no penalty saying, well, you have to reschedule. Because funny thing, last week, my son's school called and said, he was throwing up, had stomach pain, and I had patients to see that day from 11 to 4. So the school called about 1 o'clock. It was a little bit after his lunchtime, and I had to cancel the rest of patients for that day. I didn't feel guilty at all. I canceled the patients and I went and got my son and we went to the urgent care. ER was a whole another shift I had to do, 8 hour shift with my son. But just having that flexibility to do that, it was amazing. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could
That
never, yeah, like now, 5 years ago, I would be able to have so much flexibility.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. And by the way, since this is a finance podcast, you brought up the 1099 stuff, so I'll throw some quick knowledge out there for you guys. Like a lot of you, if you set this up, like you might even be able to do things like solo 401ks. And they even have like Roth solo 401ks now and that type of stuff. So we talked about like investing in real estate and everything. I mean, there's a possibility that you set those up and down the road, you could do what's called self-directed accounts and actually go through some of your tax advantage accounts to invest in things like real estate. So I mean, it just opens up the doors to so many different things you can do. And I don't want to go too deep into that because it could get pretty complicated on some of those laws and stuff. But that's where I get excited about because now you got more weapons at your disposal to generate wealth and do stuff with. So that is exciting. Now I know that you have a webinar coming up as well. What date is the webinar on? What are you going to be going through? Tell all the viewers a little bit about it. And I hope every single one of them gets on because it we talk about what's that first step. This might be your first step, going in that direction. So yeah, touch a little bit about the webinar that's coming up.
Yes, yes. So I'll be hosting a free webinar. It will be Wednesday, May 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern. So we're going to touch on how to land your first 1099 virtual contract, how to start growing scale your virtual practice. We're also going to touch on like treatment protocols, how to set up your practice from A to Z with your LLC, EMR system, labs that you'll need. And then also a bonus will be the weight loss prescribing, the semaglutide, tirzepatide, because that's big now, and a lot of nurse practitioners they know of it, but to actually, start prescribing and add it to their existing practice or med spa will be very important and increase their revenue in their practice if they're not already providing those services.
Yeah, no, that is jump on it. It's a free webinar. Like go, like yeah, it's that first step. Like you got to take it, right? So definitely recommend jumping on that. Any other words of encouragement or anything else that you want to let everybody know before we wrap up the podcast today?
I would say just chase your why. Ask yourself why you're in the current situation and why you want to change. Don't be afraid to start. Don't let fear take over you. Don't let failure take over you. Um, I really got over the concept of failure because during one of the semesters when I was in nursing school and was going through the abusive relationship, I had a semester where I didn't do good. I got D's and incompletes. I had to drop out of one of the classes, and that messed with me mentally because I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna get accepted to any nursing school because they see this. So I applied to a nursing school that I wanted to get into, and I had a call with one of the admitting directors, and they was like, we get it. We understand life happens. We see that before the semester you did great, after the semester you did great. We get that sometimes life just happens. So I just say don't be afraid of failure. Just go for it. Just start. Don't overthink it.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Um, Besides the webinar, where else on social media can everybody find you at?
Yes, I'm on Instagram, Dr. E underscore the virtual MP. It's the same on TikTok, Dr. E underscore the virtual MP. And I post. I post a lot of information. So definitely follow me on the social media platforms.
Definitely. So great having you on. That is the podcast for today. As I mentioned to everybody, you know that we at FitBucks we help, your 9 to 5 jobs, right? Your PTE or an NP, whatever it is, with your financial management. But I love when people want to go and take it that extra level, that entrepreneurship stuff. So definitely happy to have you on. I love hearing people's journeys. Hopefully this influences a lot of people to take that next step. And as always, if you guys need help with your finances, let us know over at FitBucks. And with that said, we will see you guys soon.
All right. Thank you for having me.